let me tell you what brought me to this message. Because, like you, and I remembered guess what we have?
I was going to say, don't forget the wireless mic.
We have a cordless mic. And you know what the number one fear is in America? Take a wild guess. Public speaking. No, we will not let the enemy take that area. So I was working on the message. And Mark, Ray, I'm sure you've been there. I'm working on it diligently. I'm thinking this is what God wants me to do. And then I hit a writer's block. And I'm stuck. And I'm starting to freak out. Because I'm thinking, what am I going to do if I have to get up there and speak? And it's just another ho-hum, boring message. Where we leave the same way we came in. Because that can be a fear, believe it or not, of those of us who put these messages together and get up here and know that we all, including the how do we get ministered to? You think we secretly go to other services? We get fired up and then we come back here. And our message is the way we get ministered to. So when we are doing this, it's for ourselves as well as you all. So now, I've hit writer's block. Pastor Ray and Mark, you guys okay?
Yeah.
This is shaking up Pastor Ray's world because he likes.
No.
When I'm right here in a zoom in and I'm shaking it up. So I've hit writer's block and I go to work and I'm in a situation where this fear, I'm trying to protect confidentiality about what happens when I'm at work. This spirit of fear, and that it is, for he did not give us a spirit of fear. Why would he call it a spirit of fear if it's not a spirit? So the spirit of fear tries to rise up and intimidate me. And because I recognize it so well, it was like, bam. I'm not going to speak on what I've been working on. I'm going to speak on addressing fear. Because this just didn't happen at work, but I've been having some people share some things about how that was my lexicon that got in the way, at how fear has been rising up in their own lives. So I want us to just put it in the right perspective so that it doesn't take us over. Because when I saw, brace yourself, when I saw Selah up here, do you know what I thought? First of all, oh look, she's barefooted just like Hophasia. But besides that, it occurred to me that she has been in a household where it has been role modeled to her worship, right? She happens to be in chorus where she gave us a little demonstration of her voice and we were like, oh my gosh, why isn't she up there singing? Okay, but she kept it all inside, that's okay. So then when I saw her up there, it occurred to me, the enemy has been trying to rob her of her role and her purpose and her function in the kingdom.
Come on, Pastor. Come on.
And that's what he's going to try to do to you and me at all times. When you think it's not going to happen, don't fool yourself. We just need to change our perspective and know how this little thing operates. So I'm going to give you an example. So how many were here when I got shoulder, I have to say this carefully, it's very tricky, shoulder surgery? How many have gone through shoulder surgery? Oh my good night. Yeah, I might look like I was doing okay, but it was oh my gosh. And from what I've heard, that surgery is more challenging than like a knee replacement or a hip surgery, and it was. So now, I'm about to describe to you what happened in the physical, in the tangible realm, Nick, that really represents what happens in the spiritual through 2 Timothy. So I had an arm, right?
You still do.
So I have this arm, and I'm doing my thing. I'm so excited right now because I remember we had a cordless mic. I'm still like beaming from that. So I started using my arm because it didn't occur to me that I could get an injury from overuse. I was never one in competitive sports, so I guess I wouldn't have learned it that way. I'm just doing my daily thing in my life. And I'm overusing my arm, and lo and behold, I get a full thickness rotator cuff tear. So now, it gets to the point, here I am. But you know what I really thought? I don't really need my right arm. I'll just function like that because I was terrified of the surgery. I was fearful of the surgery. And on the flip side of that, because, Ray, keep it back, and because, as I've shared with you before, my brother, through a car accident when he was a teenager, ended up a quadriplegic. And he lived that way from 15 to 54, which is amazing. Because, and I'm not sharing this story to bring any heaviness, because my brother was like so full of life and shared the Lord with everybody. I mean, what an example. The kind of break he got was the hangman's break, where when they did hangings, it broke your first and second vertebrae, and people didn't survive it, but he survived it. And I say that because sometimes people reference a quadriplegic, but it's really not, it's a paraplegic. But my brother was truly a quadriplegic, where all 4 limbs, quad, were paralyzed. And he had so much joy. And he gave away the complete love from the Father that he had, which is what brought it into completeness. I'm going to speak about that, because that's a... So in my mind, I'm going, what is the big deal about a non-functioning not broken, but non-functioning shoulder? I should be able to live with that. So I went 3 years as Flipper. Let me not go there because there's too many young folks in the room. So I went for 3 years like this, in ungodly pain. And while I was living that way, my body, the body, could not function the way it was designed.
Nope.
Listen carefully to this. The body, stop and work, I'll get you later after service. The body could not function the way it was designed. It was out of its role, out of its function, and certainly not on its path to success. that analogy away in your mind a minute, I want to share something else. How many of you go to the dentist? Woohoo! Okay, how many of you have ever had you know how they clean with that metal thing? But then they clean with like a sandblasting water source. How many have experienced the sandblasting water source? Or salt? It's salt, it's not sand. Oh, I can't handle it. Some people love it. Because when you have a stain on your teeth, little girl, do you know what they do with the saltwater blast? They keep blasting, and they keep blasting. And you will think you're in pain that will not stop. Have you been there? Come on, I know I got coffee drinkers and tea drinkers in here. You got the stains. You may not see them on the outside, but they're on the inside. And they will blast and blast it away. And I said to my dentist, what's the big deal? So what, I have stains in here. So what? On the outside it's okay, let me go home. And this is what my dentist told me. If there is a surface in which those bad things can adhere to, it's going to continue to build and get worse. I went home and I thought, I thought about it. I kind of thought about it, and then I was like, I don't know if I buy that. And I love and trust my dentist. Until one day, I was cleaning my ceiling fan. Are there any men in here that clean their ceiling fan? Really?
At least once a month.
Oh my, do not come to my house. I'm impressed with you.
You have 2 cats.
Oh
You
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
clean it
And you
up.
don't want it to look like a magnet where it attracts all the lead shavings? Yeah. Well, I'm cleaning my ceiling fan on top of the blade.
Mhm.
And what do I discover? A sticky residue. It is dirt that's gotten so built up with probably some moisture that it's become like a glue. Yeah, that's what I thought. But you know what I thought too? I don't have to clean it but so much, because who's going to see on top of the ceiling fan? And then you know what occurred to me? You know what I started thinking about? My dentist. On why they do not leave the stains on your teeth. Because it provides a surface in which things can adhere to. Because believe me, that spirit of fear, when we come up against it and we want it out, but there's a little trace in there. Oh, it's providing something for that to stick to. Because the enemy would love for me to not be functioning. Mark, yesterday, can I talk about yesterday? So Mark, if you've looked at the website, the first time Mark did the one-act play on the first witness, the story of Omar, watch it. Because last night, I was up here. I'm going to digress a minute, but don't worry, I'll know exactly where I left off. I was up here during the praise and worship. My fear doesn't stand a chance in your love. And I'm looking at this, and I just started to weep because I see that Omar, he don't know who this man is, but he has just set his eyes upon his deliverer. His situation is about to change. So, If you see the one-act play on the website, you see Mark appearing, Sie beten Samantha. He is like, but last night you could tell Mark was the warrior who the enemy was trying to rain on. But he stood in his faith and he delivered. And then after, it was like gone. I checked on Mark this morning, how you feeling? And he said Jill was even describing that very thing, that it was like a spirit of fear attacking. Because, Mark, when the enemy does that, he can pull you out of your role, out of your function, because he is intimidated by your success. Because your success is leading to more deliverance for those who are involved in hearing and seeing the first witness, the story of Omar. So if the enemy can convince me, then he doesn't have to think about his destiny, because I'm not going to rise up against him. So the Lord did not give me a spirit of fear. In other words, a spirit of cowardice. Think about what that is. Right? The enemy wants you to back down, to coward in fear, instead of believing in the manifested power of God. So that spirit, the enemy that killed the Messiah, well, guess what? The spirit that raised him from the dead is in you. So imagine when the enemy gets you that intimidated, that you are taking that manifested power of God that rose Christ from the dead, and you have chosen, I'm going to have to say this, and I'm even using it against myself, I have made a choice. I have chosen to agree with the lie, to agree with the father of lies, and to side with him instead of the Lord. I have agreed to align with that lie, to believe the liar instead of believing the word. And I understand sometimes it's hard to get out of that. When we've gotten to a point where we see our problem bigger than it is, we almost get stuck in it. And we're calling people for prayer. And we're going to the Lord thinking we're going to spend some quiet, private time and come out changed, when all we really did is kind of do a little bit of whining and complaining, and then wondering why when we came out we weren't different. So I want to point out two kinds of faith, two different places where we can be, but how that can change. Because when I realized from this situation at work and some things in my personal life that were bringing me into the fear once again, because this fear cycle, this fear thing is cyclical, isn't it? You're on the mountain. You're on the mountain. Right? If you're a Christian in the human flesh like me, I know you've gone through it. The point is, the more we're here and that valley is less, the better. We can work toward that. Because I want to get to the point where I am, all the things that I receive from the Lord and I give out to others are more in love and not fear. So, with that said, Sveta, can I share without really sharing something you text me? Okay, I'm not going to give any details. But I'm going through that thing and I realized, was I reading it through the eyes and the emotions and the thought of fear? Or was I reading it through the eyes and the emotions and the thought of love and power? Because it makes a difference in how I read it. And so I share that saying, you know, when you say, okay, what do you get? It's like the Lord spoke that. How are you filtering things happening in your life? Are you filtering it through a fear filter or a power and love filter? Because when the Lord gives you a spirit, when He doesn't give you a spirit of fear, but one of power, of love, of self-control, that self-control allows me to self-regulate. Because at some point, Omar got to this extreme. Right? Omar was not born like this, but he got to that point somehow, as we all can, depending on how we filter and give out the things in our life. And how we let the problem snowball, and how we decide, you know what, no, I'm going to find something bigger than my problem to serve, so that my problem becomes minute. And so, to give you an example, when I had decided to do the message on fear, and I'm fearing, okay? I mean, come on, the pastors are human people here. They go through the same things. And I'm in fear, and I'm going to do a message on fear. You know how I switched it? You know how I changed the atmosphere? You know how I moved from this place to this place? Guess. It'll do it every time.
Pray.
I fasted. So, and you know, you can't talk about it while you're doing it. It's that weird kind of funny thing. I'm fasting! I'm fasting. No, I can't have a donut, I'm fasting. And I was telling Lee, you know, I'm going through something and I really can't tell you about it right now, because I would have told him, I'm fasting, right? But, let me just give you an idea of how powerful it is. And fasting can include cutting out some of the things that I'm enjoying in the flesh. That donut and that coconut cake and that lemon meringue pie. Chocolate buttery chip homemade Carla cookies. But it can also include, because I do a hybrid fasting sometimes, where I'll cut out some food items, but then when I come home from work that evening, I'm not putting on Family Feud. I'm going to get in the Word instead. It's those little things sometimes that are so difficult. Why? Because they really bring in power. His power. So day one, I start fasting. And let me just give you an idea of what the enemy did, because he was running scared. Over here in this corner, the enemy running scared. I had 7 attacks Because I said, okay, I know what I'm about to do. I'm going to start documenting. I had 7 attacks, and let me tell you how they started out. One of them was something this simple. I'm watching a video on the internet, and I see this podium. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. I really like that podium. We don't have that kind of podium at our church. When I get behind our podium at our church, people can see me. You might think it's a little thing.
Distraction.
But believe me, the enemy starts on the small and he works it up to something big. And by then, you think you're having a heart attack and you got to go to the hospital. When it's fear that has snowballed. And I went, whoa, 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 get it in check, get it in check. Did you think I was about to make a TikTok video? I know you did. Anyway, so, I got back from that thing. And then I'm driving to work. You do it all the time. And somebody cut me off. That will change. Let me tell you, you want to really know what kind of Christian you are, get in some gridlock. It works every time. And I'm telling you what, I took that nasty spirit to work. Then I regrouped. But it just went on and on like that while I'm fasting. But hold tight, because you'll start to feel an inside transformation. And then the same day I started fasting, 3 powerful things happened. Glorious, wonderful, powerful things happened. It's almost like while you are sacrificing and being obedient, God has this way of reminding you, you are on the right track, daughter. You are on the right track, son. He'll do it. He's faithful to complete it. He'll do it. And let me tell you what one of them was. Some of you may have known back like in August, I don't know, somebody did a hit and run on my car. Ah! Did anybody know about that? Not everybody did, because I've learned to keep this trap shut when I'm going through difficult times. Because that becomes the glue on my fan, the stain on my teeth the enemy adheres to. Let me say that again. I don't think that quite hit like it needed to. I've learned to keep this trap shut when I'm going through difficult times, because that becomes the stain, that becomes the glue the enemy adheres to. So, I love you. So nobody really knew, because I didn't come in going, right? Or, I can't believe, can you freaking, oh my God, good to see you again. Oh my God, can you believe it? Good to see you. Can you believe? I'm telling you to bring it on. You will self-destruct. So one of the good news was, in August, this lady does a hit and run on my car. I track her down and tell her to pull her frickin' van over. No, I didn't cuss. That was called alternatives to violent language. Pull your van over. I tracked her down. You're not going to do a hit and run on me. Well, don't you know what the insurance companies do? Okay, well, you give us your version while we record you on the spot. If you ain't got nothing to hide, give it. Yeah, I'm ready. You want to record? Let's go. And then they get her version, her insurance company, and then you know what happens? The insurance companies go against each other. You don't have to do a thing except pay for the damage out of your pocket. Right? Guess what I got in the mail? A check. I guess the insurance companies settled it. And I was in the right. And I was victorious. Now, I could believe it was just wonky timing. But I believe that Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, knows exactly where I'll be each and every day of my life. And the Lord knew before I got to this point that I was going to do a message on fear and that I would fast because I'd have to change my situation. And lo and behold, He planned it so the check arrived right at the right time. But that's what happened, just one day of fasting. But sometimes you're in that place where you know you have to take your faith by force. Right? Here's the scripture. Matthew 11:12. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. I've taken my faith by force. I'm on top of the mountain. I wasn't there when I started working on the message. I changed it by fasting. I changed it by denying the flesh of its pleasure. Whether it be a glazed donut, which if you really know me, that's one of my biggest weaknesses. Which is why you don't see me eating the donuts when they're here. Because I can't do one, I do the box. Yeah, look at me. Mm-hmm. You look shocked. All right, so, and I love to come home and relax with Family Feud. As foul as it's getting, I like to watch Family Feud. I denied myself. Because I want to move. Because I know, Lord, you didn't give me the spirit of fear. This is not from you. So I have to change it. But at the same time, when I wasn't operating and taking my faith by force, you can be receiving like a child. Doesn't the scripture say that as well? Mark 10:15. Truly I tell you, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it. We're not just talking about salvation. We're talking about receiving from God with a childlike faith. And sometimes I can be in that season of my life and I'll mistake it. I'll mistake it for a period in which I'm intimidated and I'm a coward and I'm struggling. But guess what? Sometimes you're resting and you're receiving as a child. So if you have these two seasons where you're taking your faith by force or resting, receiving from God by His grace, receiving as a child, when you're one or the other, this is what someone said on the internet. You can't be both. You can't be taking the kingdom by force and receiving like a child. So I just want to take a quick little assessment here. I want to find out what season you're in. And I'm going to give you a third one. How many feel like they are going through a season right now where they're taking their faith by force? I mean, they're on that mountain. Raise your hand if you're there. Okay. And it's okay, you know, don't let fear come in you. Yeah. So about 4 of us, and that's okay. That's okay. How many feel like they're in the season where, you know, I'm getting the power and the love and the self-control from the Lord right now in a more subtle way I'm receiving as a child. How many are there? Okay. How many, let's tuck those two away. How many aren't either where you're just struggling to hang on the side of the boat? Okay. Because this is what I'd like to do.
Oh, the clock is right there. Do you know how exciting that is?
Because this is what I'd like to do before I end. I want those of us, and if you found you were in both when I took the survey, don't worry about it. I want those of us who feel as though we're taking the kingdom by force, and those who are receiving as a child, because those are great places to be, to pray for those who are hanging on the side of the boat. Now, I'd like to even consider doing it this way. Those who are receiving as a child, you can just remain right in your seat and be in agreement in prayer. And those of us, even if it's 3 or 4, who are, we're going to lay hands on that person who's hanging on the side of the boat. And then, after that, when you go home, if you're receiving as a child, great. You keep receiving as a child, because you're going to move into your next season eventually. Those of you hanging on the side of the boat, we're going to pray over you, but then when we all leave here, depending on what you want and where you are, I want you, without telling a soul, you don't have to, I want you to do a fast. But think about your fast before you start it. Think about what can I, and the enemy will make you think this, and I was about to say it out of my own mouth. What can I deprive myself of? And the enemy will convince you that you are being deprived. I'm not going to have a donut. I'm going to be deprived. But you're not. That's part of the lie. That's part of the lie he wants you to line up with and agree with. Oh, this thing happened in my family and it's never going to get better. Oh my God. Yeah, line up with the lie and agree. And you'll just help it come to pass.
Right.
But you're not going to do that, because that spirit is not coming from the Lord. So before you do your fast, you're going to think about it. You're going to think about all the areas where you could make a sacrifice for the Lord, where you could choose to walk in obedience over that thing that think it has control over you, which reminds me of something else. Remember when I shared that my father was a partier and he introduced me to partying as a teenager? Well, the reason that never stuck with me, and this occurred to me while I was working on this message, and I'm like, oh my gosh. It never stuck with me because I never liked anything to take over control of my mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I was never one to, I didn't like, I don't want to say too many things with our audience, but I didn't like substances that had me not in my right mind. So it wasn't a temptation for me, where it kept following me my whole life, and I'm trying to take it off, and it's following me, and I'm trying to take it off. And I say that because there were some things, but that wasn't one of them. That wasn't my little, you know what I mean? Everybody has something different that tries to call you back, that tries to remind you, you were amazing. Look at how he controlled that sound when I got closer. There's a weakness for everybody, right? That just wasn't one of mine. Well, when I'm preparing this message and I'm thinking about how much I let fear grip my mind, guess what I was doing?
Wanting a donut.
Besides that, I know when you really feel bad, doesn't that good? No calorie, flour, sugar-filled, salt-laden food make you feel so good?
Jill calls it comfort food.
Comfort food. mac and cheese, a whole box of hot glazed donuts. Yeah. Well, you know what occurred to me? I don't like things to take control of my mind, but I was allowing the fear to do it. What's the difference? You know, it's just like when the Lord says, when you think, you know, when you want to throw rocks at glass windows because you're not doing this major sin, your sin just a little sin, so you feel like you can judge the bigger sin. What's the difference if I'm letting fear control my mind or a drug? I had to say, And between that and the fast, I just was like, she'll be coming around that mountain when she comes. You know, when I first started speaking, if you look back at my videos, this is what I'm doing. The enemy wants to keep focused on that. So, do you remember that? Have you watched those videos? I have. Because I was not going to let you see who I really was. I wasn't going to cut loose like I am now because there was a fear of, oh my gosh, they'll judge me. What will I look like? Will they like the real me? How crazy will they think I am? And now you know. Yeah. Right?
Praise God.
Okay, if I zoom in on that one?
Yeah, funny Ray. You funny man, Ray. That does sound funny, but let me tell you what that relates to and how I have complete love that casts out all fear. Are you ready? I kind of introduced you to it with Dr. Brene Brown when she talked about being vulnerable. Do you know what vulnerable is? That's when I allow people to see me even when I make a mistake. That means, yeah, that's what I'm teaching to you. You know, when I'm on the step team and I'm doing this and then I go, it's okay. But because it allows me to be seen, and that's who I am. I make mistakes. So, you know the scripture that says, how can I love God and hate my brother? You know that scripture? That scripture's always kind of made me go, what the heck? But in order to give away God's love, which allows me to become complete in His love, I have to practice in the seen what I do in the unseen. So you know when you're feeling really good and you're in your private time with the Lord and you just love everybody. And then you go to get your mail and you see that neighbor you can't really stand. Right. How do I love God but hate my brother? I have to allow myself to be totally seen, to be vulnerable, and know it's okay. Hints as to why I talked about the way I used to speak, and I'm even getting better with pictures, right, believe it or not. The way I used to speak and the way I speak now. And it allows me to release what God gives me. It allows me to filter things through love and give out through love instead of filtering through fear and giving out through fear. Which is what makes me victorious. And the more that I do that, the more it becomes second nature. It's innate. I'm operating that way. And I'm still trying to learn how to do it. So sometimes when you see me and I'm kind of like, and then sometimes I'm like, hey Jack, good to see you. And you're like, good night, she's two people. Who is this pastor? I am really always striving to be fully who I am in God. I always am. Look, if we quit doing that, we settle for mediocrity. Oh God, I never want to settle for that. I want to try to become who I fully am in Him. And I always want to try to live my life more abundantly. Didn't He come to give me life and give me life more abundantly? How do I get there? That's how I get there. Because that perfect love casts out all fear. And sometimes you're just a declaration away from claiming it and speaking it. And sometimes we just have to make a decision. That's what I'm going to do, and that's how I am going to move forward, regardless of what I see, what I hear, what I feel. I'm going to make a decision to move forward. And then when you feel like, oh, I can't, I need a little extra, then you're going to fast. Lee, I'm sorry, you've been raising your hand for quite some time.
When you make that declaration, I believe that's when you need to speak to that fear, and speak to that fear with authority that you've been given. Fasting is great. Fasting is another way. There's many ways, but you need to also speak
Out loud.
out loud.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It's a combination of things, right?
Yeah.
That's why, I was saying when you decide, okay, I'm going to do a fast, and you can do a hybrid, you can do where you cut out, I don't know what it is that you do, but you can cut it out, right? Look at some things you want to cut out, and try it just for 3 days. Because I know fasting is a challenge. Because you really start stirring up the enemy. Boy, you get him stirred up. He's running scared. Oh my gosh, she's gonna come into more power. And you're gonna have a lot of things coming your way. Like I said, 7 attacks. Some of them are before you even get out of bed.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I'm watching a video about someone ministering to people, and then I get hooked up on the podium. So this is what I want to do. I think I saw like 4 or 5 people who said, Nikki, I'm hanging on the side of the boat. I'm about to let go and just get caught up in this current because I just can't right now. If you would be so bold to remind us, would you put up your hand again, those of you who are hanging on the side of the boat? Because, so I'm going to say, so Selah and Mercy and Bert and Rodney and who else? And Tanya. And thank you. Thank you. We might slip in someone else there. And thank you for raising your hand, even though you might be on the worship team, the ministry team, because the enemy loves to convince those in leadership, oh God, you can't dare let anybody know you're struggling. How are you going to look? You're not, you know why you raised your hand? Because you're not going to agree with that lie.
Amen.
Amen.
And when you agree with the lie, you empower the liar, and you have just made a decision not to do that.
Amen.
I'm impressed.
Amen.
So, those who are taking the kingdom by force, raise your hand again. Mark, John, Sveta, right? Did I see your hand? Okay. Join with me. We're going to start to our left. Because Selah raised her hand for hanging on the boat, right? Okay, let's come over here. Those who are receiving as a child, you can be agreeing right in your seat.